Hi, everyone. I'm Ron Corning with Forward DFW, together with the Dallas Morning News. So happy to be a part of this special presentation as we continue to cover the full scope of the pandemic. And as we begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel, as vaccinations begin to roll out across the country, it has been one of the most promising and at times one of the most challenging efforts this country has ever seen. Made easier, however, by the efforts of both private companies and nonprofits who collaborate. That's going to be the theme of today's show, collaboration and what it means to our community. Toyota is stepping forward to make sure that vaccines are more available to those who are most vulnerable, specifically our elderly population, those who live in rural areas or are shut in. And they're doing that with a platform they call Mobility Rising, together with AARP. We'll talk more about that collaboration. And what about volunteerism? What can each of us do to help make things better for those, again, who need it most? We're going to talk about that with Rob Peabody, the founder of VOMO, an organization that really is spurring a movement across the country to get more people to volunteer. Colleen Casey is senior manager, I should say, of Inclusive Mobility and Toyota Social Innovation, joining us now via Zoom. Colleen, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ron. Pleasure to be here.
You bet. We're going to talk about the scope of this effort, so far encompassing 13 states, including here locally in North Texas. But I want to establish for people and give them some context that Toyota, aside from being ingenious in its efforts to assemble vehicles, ranking #1 globally in so many aspects of your industry, you've had outreach beyond just building cars for some time.
That's right. You know, we have an amazing asset that we call TSSC, and that's the Toyota Production System Support Center. And what we do with that team is we share their know-how of the Toyota Production System principles with nonprofit partners, local governments, and we do all of this for free. And the main goal there is to help others improve process efficiency, engaging in ongoing continuous improvement, as well as improving customer satisfaction and the customer experience.
And it's a wide range of things, helping hospital systems and their emergency room processes be more efficient, which can save lives. It's also about food banks and making sure that supply chains are not interrupted so that food is delivered to those who need it most. And I know that relates specifically to this pandemic in so many ways. We saw a rise in the number of food insecure families.
Yeah, so when the pandemic started, you know, really our focus was to meet the basic needs. You know, we can all remember seeing the lines of folks waiting in line for access to food banks running out of food to provide. So that was one first step that we took as we moved into the pandemic and trying to help the communities meet their basic needs. What we've evolved to since then is we were able to, once we heard the news that vaccines are available, really engage our Toyota know-how in the administration of those vaccinations and improving the sites and the many vaccination hubs in North Texas and in other sites across the country.
Well, in fact, we had the opportunity to speak to folks both at Fair Park and up north in Frisco as well, sort of both ends of North Texas, on the impact that your team has had on them being able to process and administer more vaccines. I want to share that with our viewers, part of that, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Great.
Toyota is a master at simplifying and improving throughput.
They came on board with personnel and were ready to hit the ground running.
When Toyota first came in, it was interesting to see how easily they integrated into what we were trying to do, you know.
Toyota was able to capture numbers that we wouldn't have been able to before and help us to increase those numbers that we're able to generate, which has been huge because before it was a lot of guesswork.
We were doing up to 2,500 a day. Now we're up to some days almost 10,000 a day. Even on a slow day, when we hit 8,000, 8,500 vaccination, that still feels like a very slow day.
I was really excited when I heard that we were going to be working with Toyota.
The offer was made to come in and help, and we welcome them with open arms.
One of the things that I think made this partnership work really well was that two of our city's core values that we were striving for are operational excellence and outstanding customer service. And that really aligned with what Toyota does in terms of respect for people.
And you heard it there. It aligns with what Toyota believes in, and that is respect for people. Colleen, I'm curious to know, being part of the management of this program, it's one thing to lay it out in paper. It's one thing to talk about it and what it might look like. It's another thing to hear folks reacting to it. What are your first thoughts when you hear people respond in this way?
You know, my first thought is excitement, and it's really about a partnership and a collaboration. You know, core to sharing these principles is that our partners are engaged alongside with us. So it's not just Toyota coming in and doing on two, it's us working together. And, you know, the TSSC team can make the most complex process so simple that everybody can then build upon it and continually improve and make small changes that can lead to a major impact. You know, in this particular case, we saw decreases in wait times for vaccines and increasing the number of vaccines distributed per hour, both benefiting citizens that needed the vaccines as well as the first responders responsible for delivering those.
So now let's talk about how broad this is, because you've launched similar programs and other programs all related to making the vaccine more accessible and more available in 13 states. Specifically, what are you providing in those states to make it easier on folks?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And, you know, Toyota is also a problem-solving company. So there's respect for people and the core pillar of continuous improvement. But we also want to understand the true root causes of the problem. So while we were able to understand and improve the administration of the vaccines, we also learned that there's some folks that can't get to vaccination sites. And we may need to bring those services to them or figure out ways to get them to those sites. I lead our mobility team, our inclusive mobility team, and that's exactly what we do. We build partnerships with nonprofits, local governments, and think about what is the challenge that particularly those homebound populations face. Can we build programs to move them to the services and goods that they need, or do we need to get really creative and think about how we move those goods and services to them? And that's exactly what we're doing right now across the country in 13 states with our nonprofit partners. We're really thinking about making sure we're solving that access problem, both in terms of getting people to vaccination sites and making sure they have the information and resources they need to make good decisions in this space.
Is what's happening in LA with the fire department there and also an education program among minority communities, that among the 13 states stands out in my mind for the objective of addressing that very issue, underserved communities, and making sure that they're aware that people care about them too?
I mean, there's so many people living in their community that are homebound. And we also learned there's a lot of lack of understanding and mistrust in some of the information that individuals were receiving. So with the LA County, with the LA Fire Department, we're providing them vehicles so they can take the vaccines to people, meet them in their community. And that's the same thing that we're doing with some of our partners in DFW, as well as the other 13 states. We've also partnered with Unidos US, one of our multicultural partners, and they've launched a mobile vaccination education and awareness campaign. So really bringing the materials and information folks need to register, to understand, and to get the transportation they need to those sites. And then last but not least, we just announced a new program with AARP, working with their local and state chapters. And I'm really glad that Kyle's here today and he can elaborate on that. That one particularly focuses on our older Americans in diverse communities that may not be able to get a ride to a vaccination site.
Yeah, that is a perfect transition, because we've established that you've made it easier for all of us at each of these vaccination sites to get through more efficiently and effectively. And then that encourages others to get it when they hear that it was so easy to get through the line. And then, yes, AARP, their collaborative work with you to reach seniors also where they are. Colleen, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Colleen Casey with Toyota, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And we look forward to continued partnerships. You know, for us, it's really about how do we go beyond dollars, leverage the know-how of our employees and our company, and share that with our partners that are doing work in this space as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do. And in fact, for more information on Toyota, here's where you can go. And we'll be back right after this. If you have been inspired by Toyota to get more involved in your community, go to Forward DFW. That's FWD DFW.com. All right, we are back, and my next guest needs no introduction. Colleen Casey teed this up for us as we talked about AARP and their collaboration with Toyota. Kyle Rako is joining us from AARP. How are you, Kyle? Good to see you.
Great to be here today.
You have to be proud of the efforts that are underway and the results you're seeing so far. You also heard from the folks at Fair Park and in Frisco.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And it's such an honor to work with such an amazing organization like Toyota. AARP Driver Safety, we're a flagship social mission program whose mission is to help increase safe mobility through driver and rider safety. And I think that's why the relationship with Toyota is just so tremendous, because I know that we share at our core that mission in safe mobility.
Was this relationship pre-existing? Had you worked with Toyota in any other way before, or was this born out of the pandemic and this effort to make sure that vaccinations make it to the people who need it most, or vice versa?
Yeah, actually, this is about a decade-long, very strong, impactful relationship that started out really focused in on driver safety education and helping individuals extend their safe driving years. So we've partnered with Toyota for many years on that, but actually just given their innovation and forward thinking, we're always collaborating, and this had just presented a great opportunity to focus in on our expertise and help individuals in regards to the COVID-19 vaccine administration.
Let's talk about this logistically, because you've had the program Ride at 50 Plus for a while, correct? And now comes Mobility Rising, which is a joint effort of both Toyota and AARP. And how does it work exactly? As I understand it, it's a source and a service where someone who needs a ride to a vaccination site can get it and get it paid for?
That's right. It's a newly launched program called AARP Ride at 50 Plus, where multiple modes of transit can be found, booked, and paid for all in one place. So it's built off of the Mobility as a Service framework, again, which provides a single point access to review, compare, book, and pay for local transportation alternatives through a mobile application, through an online booking platform, or many of our users still enjoy and love using the phone to book those rides.
Well, isn't that also a matter of necessity? I was listening to NPR about one problem in particular for an elderly community in Florida, and that is many over a certain age did not have access to a computer, didn't have an email, they don't have a smartphone, and so you provide for them a number they call, and then one of your representatives can then log on and book that Uber or that Lyft. Is that an accurate sort of assessment of how it all plays out?
It is. It's very accurate. I think that the one thing that I would add is that that concierge, I'll say, is available by phone, is also there not only through the booking and payment process, but also through and leading up to the ride. For many of these folks, this may be the first time that they're leveraging a service like this. And so we're seeing opportunities to support an individual through not only the first call of transaction, but developing a relationship and making sure that they feel confident and supported until they hop in that vehicle.
Give me some sense. So in some communities where Uber and Lyft are more accessible, taxis are more readily available, is one thing. What about for people who are shut in and live in rural communities? We've heard many stories about the difficulties of access and availability for them. Where do you fill the gap? How do you fill the gap in that respect?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we're exploring with Toyota is actually the integration of, for example, volunteer driving organizations within the platform. And really, how does this platform through technology enable, again, multiple modes of transportation, from the private transportation network companies to the public companies, such as public or mass transit, but also the volunteer driving organizations as well. So kind of using technology to think differently and more holistically about mobility and really trying to remove barriers and increase access to that mobility as well.
During this pandemic, I don't mean to catch you off guard with this question, but I'm wondering from a 30,000 foot view during this pandemic, what have you learned about the value of AARP in situations like this? It matters always, but when it matters most, we're talking about a once in a lifetime pandemic, for many people, once in a lifetime, we hope, that has affected us in so many ways, emotionally, economically, and making sure that the most vulnerable are vaccinated is really, really key to getting through this.
Absolutely. This was our time to shine and show up and be there for the most vulnerable. Again, this was a very proud moment, I think, for both Toyota and our AARP to come together and collaborate in this way for the most vulnerable during this period.
Yeah, and I think I want to make it clear here, if I haven't, these rides for seniors, those over 50, are free. AARP together with Toyota, and in places where funding is needed to pay these Uber, Lyft, taxi drivers, et cetera, that's coming from grants from Toyota to help fund your efforts and reach people where they are. How important is that to you when you see someone like Toyota, an amazing corporate citizen here in our own community, do such outreach that affects people across the country and aids your organization?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so, financially, that's just one of the barriers to access. But Toyota, again, as Colleen mentioned earlier, Toyota is so much more of a partner and a collaborator with us in this program. They bring a lot of industry expertise. And so it's just been a joy to work together with them on this program. And yes, Dallas residents can now book essential rides, including transportation for their COVID-19 vaccine appointments and other essential trips on the platform.
Yeah, well, you've been incredibly valuable to them because you've informed them of what the need really is, and then they can meet that need. It's hard to meet a need if someone isn't specific about what that need is, and you all do such a great job in assessing that, articulating it, communicating it. So thank you as well, Kyle, for your efforts. Kyle Rayco with AARP. And what about volunteers? This wouldn't be possible without people giving of their time and giving of their knowledge. Well, one organization that we've highlighted before is key in all of this as well, and that is VOMO. We'll hear more from them when we come back in just a moment. For more information on transportation to a COVID-19 vaccination site, log on to aarp.org/RideDallas or call 1-800-466-1461. You may qualify for a free ride. All right, we're back continuing our conversation that really revolves around collaboration. We saw Toyota collaborating with AARP as they continue their efforts to make sure that vaccination sites are efficient and that people are getting the vaccinations where they need them most. We want to bring in Rob Peabody. He is with VOMO, Volunteer Movement, and we've highlighted the organization before. Rob, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks, Ron. Good to see you again.
You bet. And give me some sense for those who may be hearing about VOMO for the very first time. You established this platform that allows people to find organizations that need volunteers, but more importantly, volunteer organizations that are really hardest hit during the pandemic have turned to you as a resource as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So VOMO, it's a web platform, but it's also an app, right? In the Google Android store or the Apple iOS. And what it's doing is it's connecting needs in communities with people who can go and meet those needs, as well as organizations. But to your point, during the pandemic, we've seen just this overwhelming, just demand come on the nonprofit sector across DFW and North Texas, and really the world. And those institutions and organizations have the ability to post their opportunities and then the help that they need, whether it's time, whether it's gifts, skills, donations, whatever it might be, and then really just have a megaphone to push that out into our local communities so that people can come and meet those needs to really help one another during our time of greatest need.
Yeah, I remember during the pandemic early on when the food banks saw such an increase in demand so suddenly, you carried the weight of finding volunteers to help them so they could stay focused on the most important thing, and that is making sure that their folks were working as hard as they could to keep people fed, those who were suddenly finding themselves food insecure. Did you imagine when you started this platform that you would be such an important component on vaccination sites, also helping staff and volunteers for this very important part of ending the pandemic?
No, I had no clue. I mean, who could predict a pandemic? And then secondly,
Right.
that we've been playing such a role like this. We've actually seen just in the past year that the platform has expanded to 30 different countries globally now. And not only are we helping source those needs for those nonprofits to get those people to meet them, but then also giving people ways to have meaningful engagement in their local community. And it's, I think the poster child we're finding is DFW and North Texas, and through this partnership with Forward DFW, it's unlike anything that we are seeing on a national level. And the ability to connect those who have needs and those who can meet those needs it's just a really powerful opportunity that technology is giving us in the way that we leverage it today.
Yeah, and as we talk about collaboration and coordination and people working together to help each other because we're better together, you mentioned Forward DFW, an entity of the Dallas Morning News, and Gillian Breidenbach is joining us from Forward DFW. And Gillian, I know your mission on the front end of Forward DFW long before the pandemic was to shed light on organizations that are doing good in our community. You just heard Rob say it, without you spreading the word of what they do and what Toyota does and what AARP do, we wouldn't be in a situation where we are to allow people to know what's happening.
Absolutely. When we launched this 3 years ago, this really was a platform for us to talk about corporations, causes in the community, and linking them all together. And I think a theme you heard throughout the entire show is collaboration. And with partners like Toyota, AARP, and VOMO, we really are able to bring volunteer opportunities to anybody regardless of where they are in the country. We are just thrilled that it's on our platform. But if we can help people get out and get a vaccine that don't have the mobility capabilities, then that's what we're here to do. We're launching this summer a virtual volunteer campaign called Find Your Silver Lining. So for those that want to volunteer but are still being really cautious, thanks to Rob and all of the great work that he does sourcing nonprofits, we've got opportunities across the country where people can go virtually volunteer until they're comfortable getting back in person.
And yes, you are spreading the word, and all of these efforts can happen, but they can't happen in a vacuum unless people know about them. So thank you with the Dallas Morning News for spreading the word and informing people. Rob, I want to leave people with one final thought, and that is, how do they log onto your platform, and what are 3 ways right now you think they can get involved?
Yeah, the very simple. The easiest way to do that now is to go to forwarddfw.com. So it's FWD DFW.com. They hit volunteer. It'll drop them straight into VOMO and show campaigns and ways to serve all across North Texas. And so you'll see projects with Toyotas or with United Way of Metropolitan Dallas or with Brother Bill's Helping Hand. And to your question, there are virtual opportunities that people can do, literally sitting right there at their house in front of their computer. And it's as simple as writing a note of encouragement or being a social media ambassador for one of our nonprofit charities on there. Secondly, they can go and actually volunteer their time. We've got a lot of summer projects that have just been posted. There's hundreds of them on this site. And, you know, a really interesting one, Brother Bill's and Mercy Street have teamed up to do summer camps this summer for families and children in South Dallas, and they desperately need coaches. So people that can just literally give an hour or 2 of their time on a weekend, it's a way to go down there and serve, change somebody's life, and really allow yourself to live for something that's bigger than you, which brings a lot of healing and a lot of just health to us right now, especially during a year like 2020, where it feels like a lot has fallen apart and we're now rebuilding. So lots of opportunities, virtual, in person, and there's ways to donate as well for people that can't actually get out of the house or go give their time. They can donate straight through the site as well to specific projects and to those nonprofit 501c3s here in North Texas.
Yeah, when you talk about virtual volunteerism, people can give of their expertise and it doesn't cost them anything. I have a friend who's a public relations person, and she's able to log onto your site, find a cause that's looking for some guidance to get some attention for their event or their cause, and she leaves feeling like she's given of herself in a very important way to an organization that then in turn is able to give back to the community, and that's how it all comes full circle. Rob, thank you for being here. Good to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us for this edition of Forward DFW, together with the Dallas Morning News. Better together is what we say, and we'll see you next time.